Hi Joe, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jenny. Good evening. How are you getting on?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Although not very happy about the fact that this sort of 30-degree weather has turned into, less than 13 degrees and just constant rain. You can see behind me, it's not looking particularly exciting or idyllic up here on the wolds just right
Yeah,
now.
certainly
Which is,
less spectacular than usual.
yeah, it is. Just given that there's a bit of a sea threat coming and it's very foggy and very cloudy, and you can't see anything.
Mm.
Yeah, not ideal. I prefer sunshine, if I'm honest. Okay, so welcome everybody to Field to Bottle number 5. Can you believe it? We're into our 5th week of this, and this week we're looking at distillery projects 005 and 006. So we've got a few people who've joined us already. I can see the numbers ticking up on the top of the screen. So we'll just give it another few seconds before we get going good and proper.
Great.
So good day today, Joe?
Yeah, really good actually. Yeah, really good. As kind of usual, just working on upcoming releases. So yeah, it's been a busy old day. The dress is getting very full.
It is getting very full. Just look at it back there. How's that going down in your house?
Yeah, I think I had billed this as just being like a 2-week thing. Do you know what I mean? I was like, yeah, no, it'll be okay. You know, you'll get all the photos back in a couple of weeks and trinkets and whatnot, and yeah, just keep adding whiskey basically. So
Yeah.
I think it's great use of a dresser. You know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I maybe on M's side there. It's just how things go, isn't it? Okay, so my internet is being a bit flickery, but I'm going to put that down to the fact that I'm in the middle of nowhere and it's raining, which is always pretty bad for Wi-Fi signal up here. So bear with us if things happen to flicker a little bit. Right, we've got a few people on now, so I think let's get going. So hello, Paul, who's one of our cask owners, a very good friend of the distillery, and Diane, who's one of the team members as well. So yeah, we've definitely got a few people watching now. So right, so let's get going. So without further ado, welcome to Field to Bottle number 5. I'm Jenny. I head up the marketing at Spirit of Yorkshire Distillery. I'm less interesting. I'm sort of here just to ask questions and keep things moving. The most interesting person on this, though, is Joe Clark, who's the whiskey director. And today we're going to be talking about our distillery projects 005 and 006, which were single cask maturing malts. And they were the last things that we released last summer before, drumroll, we had our first ever single malt whiskey. So they were a pretty big deal. Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I can't believe we bottled these a year ago. So
I know,
were in June last year.
it feels like no time at all, and yet it feels like everything is different. I still can't quite believe that it's been a year since we released the whiskey.
Yeah, for sure it is. It's really quite great. It's been really nice revisiting these actually over the past few weeks, because yeah, you know, it's obviously how the whiskey's progressed and what we're taking to bottle and how the warehouse is changing and all that kind of thing, but also just where we were at as as a team of people working together as well. And yeah, that's been a quick year. It's definitely been a fast year. So yeah, I guess onto the whiskey, or the maturing malt as it was then, and yeah, these were the last 2 bottles in the set of distillery projects maturing malts that we did. So yeah, the previous weeks we talked about 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This week obviously 005 and 006 that we've got here. So I'll do a quick overview on the range. I think it's probably worth, if anyone's not familiar with what they're all about. Sadly, you can't buy these now. These have gone. These are lost to the pages of whiskey history for us. But yeah, early on, from it was December, just after we'd opened in Easter 2017. So yeah, December 2017, we started bottling some young aged spirit that we'd laid down, and yeah, they were getting really popular. There's a few different reasons that we did it. I'm not going to go exactly into that right now because we've done that in previous videos. You can always skip back, but they were really about making sure that people could see what was happening, and the kind of getting a little bit of insight into the whiskey we were making, or that would be coming. Crucially, it gave something for people to pick up when they were with us and they came to visit the distillery. We weren't a distillery that did white spirits early on, so we took the decision to bottle some pre-whiskey which is pretty brave. Not a lot of distilleries have done that. If they do it, they don't often shout about it. So yeah, we started a series of bottlings, and the two that we've got here are at the tail end of this. So this was 5 and 6. We bottled these in June last year, and they were the kind of the last kind of bottlings in this series before we kicked off with the whiskey, with the Filey Bay single malt, which came in the October of that year. So yeah, the 05. Have you got a glass, Jen? Somewhere. I think I've lost your sound as well. You're muted, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm back on. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a tech fail up at this end. No, I don't have a glass with me, mainly because I don't have an open bottle of 005 and 006, and the only ones that we do have up on the farm, I've been told under no circumstances am I allowed to open because they are exceptionally precious to both Alex and Tom.
Yeah, that's a very fair statement. There certainly wasn't a lot of this. So whereas with the other bottlings, they were marriages of casks, typically about 5 casks, yielding around 2,000 bottles for each of the others. Whereas with these, big difference was they were single cask. And yeah, we dropped them into a smaller bottle size. And yeah, with any single cask release, you're talking a very, very small number of bottles yielded from that individual cask. So yeah, in the case of this, it's 549 bottles, and yeah, they're like hen's teeth now, So I'm not surprised you're not allowed to open them, to be honest. I mean,
yeah,
you could just.
It was some poor planning for me. I just assumed there'd be a bottle open somewhere. I should have gone down to the distillery and seen if I could sort of steal a sample from somewhere. But no, that's the thing. So especially 005, of which there was 544, is that correct? And we had a few outside the distillery at 7:30 a.m. that morning, and we had quite a few phone calls from people from further afield. So we released it as a fully distillery exclusive, so only available at the distillery in person. And we had some interesting phone calls from people sort of attempting to bribe staff in order to get them to post a bottle out to them. It was a bit surreal and quite fun on one side.
Yeah. It turned out that they were a massive hit. We were just talking a little bit before this. We weren't going to try and kind of push that part of it too hard, but they really were. Yeah, to have a queue about 40 people deep outside the distillery on the day that you put them out, when it's not even whiskey yet, was really amazing. If anyone's tuned in that came out for that queue, well played. And if you happen to have a bottle and you feel like opening it, now's the time to do it, because it is really, really tasty stuff. So yeah, it was a single cask. The cask in question. So we talked about these in the previous weeks, which I'm happy to go over again, which is the STR wine cask that we filled. So this was a single STR wine barrel, with the S standing for shaved, the T standing for toasted, and the R standing for recharred. So shaved, toasted, recharred. And that process is really about kind of reconditioning the cask so it's suitable for kind of long-term, a nice balanced maturation of whiskey, as opposed to just fill it. If it didn't do that process hadn't happened, and you just kind of emptied out the wine, filled our spirit straight in, the wine would very quickly overwhelm the character of our new make. So this reconditioning process is about making the cask much kind of better suited for whiskey maturation. They're absolutely stunning casks, and this really, really proves it. And yeah, so one single STR cask, and it is super, super fruity stuff. So when we bottled these, we normally with single cask whiskies, you might expect to see them at cask strength. That's fairly typical. Some bottlers might take them down to 50. They're usually at a higher percentage, but I mean, we took the decision to take these down to 46 because they are still very young. The kind of spirit in question here, about kind of 2.5 years old at this point. So, it did benefit really quite dramatically from being cut back to 46, as opposed to a kind of full strength, which would have been around kind of 61 when we did these. But yeah, it's really kind of, very, very, very obviously fruity. You know, we talk about fruit in whiskey. Sometimes it can be a little bit subdued. Some people don't get it, but if you get your nose in a glass of this, it really is a lot of red fruit and a lot of kind of raspberry, that kind of dark kind of berries. You know, the kind of summer fruit cheesecake. You know, the kind of intense layer of kind of fruity, jammy stuff that you get on top of a cheesecake. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember there's quite a lot of like honey notes in there as well. There was some, it was really, really deep. Yeah, lots of interesting flavors. So we've got our first comment that's just come in. So Hugo Joe. So based on what you know so far, can you estimate when the STR will be at its peak?
It's a really good question. I wouldn't want to stick my neck out and say, you know, at any given year this will certainly be its best. You still have you know, nuances between each barrel. You know, so it isn't always black and white, and sometimes they can be quite surprising just how far some can advance a bit quicker than others. But you know, I think a lot of these casks are going to be really. I mean, this was exceptional at 2.5 years old, to be honest. But there's a lot of these casks that we've laid down. I say a lot; it's quite a small percentage of our overall warehouse. But you know, some of them are tasting fantastic already at kind of 3.5 years. And I'd like to say some of these will really come into their own 6 to 8 years. We'll see if anyone's looks back on this video in kind of 5 years time. Can hold me to that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So that's the STR one. So we talked about the Rioja STR casks. So they're from Spain. I had a mind blank earlier, and I asked where Rioja came from, but obviously that's come from Spain. And is there anything else we should know about those casks that you think might be interesting?
I think that it's worth bearing in mind that they're quite a new type of cask. They were championed, pioneered by a chap called Dr. Jim Swan, who we worked with very, very closely, setting up Spirit Yorkshire. So, you know, he was really at the forefront of this cask type. Indeed, working with the cooperage that we work with now, which is Jose Miguel Martin, and you know, the cask from Miguel and his team are just absolutely top notch. You know, they really are some of the very, very best casks you'll get in the whiskey industry, and the STR angle on that, in terms of whiskey maturation, is quite a new one. So yeah, it's an advanced. I would say it's an advanced type of cask used in the industry, and certainly not that common in the grand scheme of the industry.
Okay, great. So if we move on to 006, so what made 006 different from 005?
So straight away, a completely different type of cask. So the 06 was a much bigger cask, and this was a sherry butt. So the STR there is what, a 220 litre kind of wine barrique, whereas the Fino cask in question here, sherry butt, and that was kind of 500 litre capacity in that cask. So these are big casks, and if any of you have been to the distillery, or if you're planning to come and have a look, then you know, you'll see we've got some sherry butts down on the distillery floor. So yeah, they're big casks, and so obviously with a bigger cask, bigger yield of bottles. So we're looking at 1,142 bottles that were yielded from this particular cask. And again, this was taken back to 46% alcohol, and it is a 50 cl bottle, of course. So you know, it was a good yield of bottles from the cask. And obviously with slightly more bottles, the frenzied rush to get them wasn't quite as rapid as it was for the 05. So yeah, the cask was very different, the size of the cask, and as you might expect, the flavour is completely different as well. So you know, it's really nice having them side by side. If you're in a privileged position like I am right now, you've got the two side by side. You know, this is that kind of really upfront, really super fruity style, whereas this is a little bit more subdued, a bit lighter, it's kind of spicier, a bit more elegant. It's arguably, of the two, it's probably for me a little bit more entertaining, because it'll make you work a bit harder to kind of pull the flavors out of it. It's not as kind of in your face as this, even though as lovely as that is. This is a little bit kind of, yeah, a little bit more mysterious. It's got a bit more kind of depth is perhaps the wrong word, because it isn't as rich, but it's certainly got yeah, kind of a few more strings to its bow in terms of layers of flavor.
Yeah, I really like the kind of the tropical-y type fruits that you come through on this one. So things like the what's the word, pineapple, that kind of thing. That just it felt really nice, very summery, really good for a not that it's almost, yeah, not that it's too much, but it felt like a really nice summery drink.
Mm-hmm. It has a really nice kind of like spiciness to it as well. So it's a lovely kind of gingery and kind of like that kind of sweet spices, kind of sweet baking spices. And yeah, you got this lovely, I remember talking about this quite a lot when we launched it and we're tasting it with people, but after you've swallowed it and you just kind of breathe in and out a little bit, just after you've swallowed, you got this lovely, lovely lift of coconut and a slight kind of really, really light chocolatey note as well, which just kind of just rushes through your senses, and it's really, yeah, really interesting. And you know, I suppose looking at the age, you know, it's 2.5 years old, and the type of cask as well. You know, you certainly wouldn't expect it to be drinking like this. You know, I don't think anybody looking through a warehouse of casks and seeing that at 2.5 years would expect this kind of flavor profile at that age. They really were exceptional. There's no doubt about it. The selection process on them was very, very thorough, obviously. Actually, the kind of piece of work undertaking at this particular time was, remember, I was going through all our 2016 fillings. I don't know if you remember that, Jen, because I was really hard to get hold of.
Yeah, and trying to get tasting notes off you and things like that for label was hard work.
It's kind of up in a. It was quite cold as well. I remember being up at the warehouse and the farm, kind of really cold, but just, you know, going methodically working through all the kind of fillings from that year. So, you know, it was really, really amazing, you know, because when you go doing a piece of work like that, you get to know the warehouse really well. You get to know our whiskey really, really well, obviously. And yeah, you know, being able to kind of cherry pick these two out of all of those casks that we filled was really amazing.
Actually, that leads really neatly into a question that's just come in, and also something I was going to ask about as well, which is, so the question is why a Fino and not a PX or Oloroso? And then actually, if you follow that up about kind of what made each of these casks so special. So we had cask 109 for 005 and cask 104 for 006. So why those specific casks and that specific style, I guess, as well?
Yeah, sure. So why Fino? You know, kind of that's out quite easy with why not. Yeah, we filled quite a few different types of sherry casks early on. You know, and it was kind of, you know, what's going to work well with our style of whiskey that we're making. You know, the style of whiskey, if you've been through kind of first release, second release, super light. You know, really kind of delicate, light style that we've got. And, you know, you've got to be careful that you're not using casks that are going to kind of really overwhelm that. So the Fino cask, in terms of a style of sherry, is much lighter and much drier. Oloroso, technically a dry style as well, but is certainly packing more kind of fruit, and will certainly give you a lot kind of deeper, richer flavors. And PX is kind of even a step beyond that. Now we did have alongside these kind of sister casks of PX and Oloroso, but they just needed a bit more time, to be honest with you. They're tasting really good. They're still, you know, really, really interesting flavor wise. But I think this just really not only did it let the distillery character still shine through, which is always really important in any of the bottlings that we're doing. You know, we want to make sure that distillery character is in that background. At the very least, if not right in the forefront, and you know that allowed it. It gave that nice balance, and you know, good whiskey, or in this case, maturing malt for me is always about balance. You know, and you've got to be able to kind of, you know, not just wood and not just kind of too much kind of heavy hitting sherry, because with that, for me, you know, you lose the distillery DNA in that. So yeah, we you know, off the back of these early fillings that we did, we've committed more spirit to Fino sherry casks, and you know, they're really, really stunning. You know, they're really beautiful, balanced flavour that you get from them. And there was another part to that question. Was there another part?
Yes, there was, but actually another question's just come in, which actually I think leads neatly into that, follows neatly on from what you're saying, and then we can address the other part of the question after that. So the next bit of the question which has come in is, so would you use a Fino as a finishing cask at some stage?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You know, we've got a lot to think about in terms of finishing. There's obviously we've done the Moscatel release. The potential with it is huge. You know, you can create really beautiful layers of flavour. You can make some really beautiful whiskey. Would Fino be a great part of that? You know, yeah, potentially. So yeah, it's certainly not off the cards at all. You know, at the moment, the Fino we've got is kind of largely full term. So, you know, yeah, so it's kind of not on the plan right now, but certainly not off the table.
Okay, so the next part of the question that we were going to talk about was the specific cask numbers. I think you've probably addressed this already, but it might just be worth covering over. But what was it that made cask number 109 and cask number 104 just really stand out when you were doing that kind of long week of tasting and sampling?
So, you know, most people that are familiar with what we're doing and the whiskey we're making will know that, you know, the predominant cask type that we lay down is first fill bourbon. So you know, the reason for this being that, you know, that's the kind of backbone of our distillery style. It works really, really well with our spirit, and you know, there are other reasons as well. But that's the bulk of what we're filling. So when you're going through a piece of work on in terms of long-term sampling and tasting, you know, you're going through a lot of bourbon barrels. So you know, they stand out immediately simply because they're so different to the main cask type that we're doing. Within that, you know, they have sister casks. You know, we didn't just fill these casks in isolation; they were filled alongside, you know, other sherry casks or other STRs. So, you know, this was part of a group of 10 casks that were filled back in October 16. I can remember them. I can remember them being on the warehouse floor. So Tom and Dave had just filled these probably about maybe as soon as about 2 weeks before I started with Spirit of Yorkshire, and so they were sitting on the warehouse floor. I remember us kind of checking them out over the kind of few weeks that they were sat down there. And these 10 STR casks were really instrumental in this early distillery projects range. So, you know, of those 10 that we filled then, you know, they've actually formed, so one went into 01, one went into 02, one went into 03, two went into 04, one here. So, you know, this was part of a group of just 4. I remember it was sitting alongside 115, 111, 110, and this is cask 109. And it was like splitting hairs when it came to this one on 115. They were super, super close. The thing that clinched it for this was actually it just had a brighter nose when it was at 46. The aroma profile of the nose was just more pronounced, and it just lured you in a bit more and a bit quicker to 115. It's quite interesting. You get to know the cast really well, you know, as you probably gather. And 106 had a sister, which was 105. Which is still doing its thing at the moment, and it's still tasting really great. That was, again, it was hard, but that was a slightly easier decision to make. This particular Fino butt just had that depth, and it just kept going, and you know, the flavors on the back end were really interesting, you know, and it kept you really engaged. Whereas its siblings either side of it were still good and interesting, but they weren't quite as well balanced. It's, you know, again, I'm coming back to balance on this because they were, you know, I think it was 105. It had a much bigger nose than this, you know, and you kind of go, wow, that's the one. But then when you start really working through it and tasting and taking your time with it, you go, actually, that's better balanced. It had the layers of flavor running through it, which, you know, is for me, and indeed anybody who enjoys complicated, delicious spirit is really important. You know, it needs to have layers of flavor.
Great. So talk a bit more about where we get our Fino casks from. So something that's come out since we did the Moscatel one. There was a couple of people on Twitter kind of debating whether we really could say sherry or not, or whether we did that or not. So it'd be good opportunity to talk a bit more about our casks and where they're from in Spain.
Yeah, sure. So so our kind of cask, all our casks from Spain, coming from a chap called Miguel Martin, and he's arguably, the kind of, it's a bit unfair. I don't want to say the best out there, because there's obviously brilliant alternatives, but Miguel's casks are just superb. I know there's a lot of other distilleries that would pay testament to that. He's well suited for kind of production, for making casks and supporting the whiskey industry through the casks that he makes. That's really important. There's just so much rides on the wood, and you've got to get the best casks for you, for your distillery, and for the whiskey you're trying to make. Now I know Dave's going to go more into wood in later one of these, and I'm sure he'll tell you the tales of him out in Spain, enjoying more than 2 or 3 glasses of sherry, I'm sure, with Miguel and the guys out there. But yeah, it's interesting because you've got a kind of wide spectrum of producers. Obviously, you've got kind of fortified wine casks outside of that, which up until I think it was as recent as really kind of 2014. It was really only then that there was a kind of definitive look. If you're saying sherry cask, it's got to be from this specific kind of accredited makers of sherry, of course, which Miguel is one of. So so it's undisputed that they're sherry casks. The Moscatel ones are really interesting as well, because of course Moscatel is generally a sweet white wine, and that won't just be made in the sherry region of Spain, but it'll also come from other places like Portugal or Italy. But yeah, in the case of us and the casks that we're using, which aren't coming from the US at the moment, we source them from Jerez, from Miguel, and they are absolutely stunning, doing really, really great stuff for our whiskey.
Brilliant.
And for everyone drinking it.
Yeah. Okay, so slightly more light-hearted question. Do you struggle to do the paperwork and drive home after you've been testing casks?
So it's a very valid question. I'm incredibly responsible, obviously. Not driving so much recently has allowed me to do more kind of tasting work than I would typically do in a normal working day. Normally, if I'm up at the warehouse, it's a case of, it's all about nosing, really. That's the kind of principal starting point with all of them. And if I'm doing a big day of sampling, I'll just stay over. It's really easy. If I'm looking to kind of do a lot more kind of tasting work and that kind of thing, I'll tend to do it from here. The paperwork's just a struggle anyway, regardless of the whiskey you're tasting or not tasting. I'm good, if not getting better.
No, you're getting better. You definitely are. I think me and India can both attest to that. Good. Okay, well, so we're nearly up at about 30 minutes, which tends to be where we aim to keep things at. There's a couple more comments that I'll just pull out. So one from Jason, who's one of our friends of the distillery, but he's in the US. And we've been back and forth with him quite recently about how we can get bottles to the US. And unfortunately, we don't have the system set up yet, but he is saying that he's managed to get through the lovely chap at Stamford Bridge, whiskies.co.uk.
That's great.
And I know that there's a couple of other people who may be interested in that. So hopefully you're watching and you can see that that's happening there. Also good to know that David, our co-founder, said even he only has one each of the 005 and 006. So it really was hard to get hold of. And I think when we don't have multiple bottles at home, that really does prove that it was extremely limited. Good question that's just come in here. So when and what is the next release? It hasn't already been asked, and we haven't told anyone, and we're still not going to tell anyone. But
no, we're keeping that close to our chest now.
Pardon?
So we're keeping that quite close to our chest, if not very close to our chest. But it's tasting good.
It is. There are lots of things. We've got some. You're pointing at some sample bottles. But which one? There's hundreds. Yeah, we've got lots of interesting things coming up in the pipeline, especially for the latter half of the year. So there'll be much more about that. And then that very neatly segues into the newsletter. So if you'd like to hear more about the distillery in general, every month we do a newsletter that's very chatty, full of lots of news, different things. We try and include content in there as well that hasn't been released on social channels before either, so that you really do get to be the first to know. And the crucial thing about the newsletter is that we always open all of our releases up to our newsletter subscribers prior to the general public knowing about them. So for things like this, the 005 and 006 releases, that went out for, sorry, I've just seen a comment. I'll tell you what it is in a second. All the newsletter subscribers got early access and pre-order access to 005 and 006 first. Sorry, I'm being very distracted by the comments. So that previous comment about the next release was just followed up by the same chap asking if it will be ready for his birthday. Unfortunately, I have no idea, but maybe. And then other things just to do a quick plug for. Of course, we've got our Moscatel finish, which is going really well on the website. And if you haven't got hold of it just yet, you can do so via our website. And we have a really quite a special offer on at the moment, which is basically because we're missing having people at the distillery so much, is that for when things resume back to normal and we're able to welcome people back to the distillery for tours, we've said that for every, if you buy 2 or more bottles on the website for a limited period of time, then you'll be able to get a tour voucher, a complimentary tour voucher for 2 people. Sorry, everyone is just getting distracting me in the comments about when their birthdays are. But thanks for letting everyone for letting us know those things. We'll keep those in mind for our product plans coming up. And then the last thing that I just wanted to mention, because we're over our usual time now, is that Father's Day is 3 weeks away, so we're going to be launching a few things over the next week or so that are specific to Father's Day. No new products, I'm afraid, but a couple of kind of collection sets and different ways that you can order that might make it really special for your dad or the father figure who you might want to buy something for. The first one of which has just gone live on our website, and that's called the Outdoors Collection, the Filey Bay Outdoors Collection. And it's a bottle of Filey Bay second release, an Aspinalls of London hip flask that has a really beautiful Spirit of Yorkshire engraving on the top. Some very exciting whiskey hearts that have been made, chocolate whiskey hearts that have been made by Bullion Craft Chocolate in Sheffield. And if you've been to any of our tastings or our open day before, you'll know that Bullion chocolate is absolutely outstanding. And they've made these whiskey caramels using Filey Bay second release. And we'll also, for every pack that's purchased, we'll also be donating £5 to the RSPB reserve at Bumpton Cliffs, which is the home of our distillery mascot, which is the gannet. So that's now available on the website. It's £100 for that full set, which we think is really a nice deal, and definitely one for the summer months as people are able to spend more and more time outside. So if any other questions coming in, or Joe, is there anything else you wanted to just mention as a last signing off on?
Got one kind of ultimate gift for Father's Day, which is of course a cask of whiskey, which are still a handful available. So yeah, if you like the idea of owning a cask, get in touch. I'm sure any father would like one of those.
I'd be a very nice child, I think, to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I won't be getting one for my dad, just to be clear, in case he's watching.
No, I'm going to get one for my dad either, but I don't think he would buy it, does he? That might be going against the grain. Okie doke. I think looking at the comments, that seems to be just about everything, or it just seems to be descending into different things now anyway. So without further ado, I think we'll leave it there for this week and say see you next week, when we'll be talking all about casks and maturation for our 6th field to bottle. All right. Cheers.